G'day guys, how's it going? I'm here to bring you yet another video on Industrial Craft 2. This particular one is finally about generators like this and like this. Just before I do go into that though, I would like to mention that I have found out, or I've read on the launcher of the Feed the Beast launcher, that apparently there is not going to be a open and stable and finalized version of the Feed the Beast Ultimate Pack for the 1.5 update, basically because Elaram, who is the mod author for Red Power 2, one of the major mods inside this mod pack, basically got really screwed over when Mojang went and updated to 1.5, because Red Power 2 uses redstone logic and redstone in general quite extensively, and 1.5 is known as the redstone update. It's basically a big revamp of redstone, so Elaram's got his hands full, or her hands full, whoever it is, fixing up all of those. And also Mojang, in their infinite wisdom, decided to change the way that textures are being held and carried inside the game itself. And considering Red Power 2 has all of those micro blocks, literally hundreds of blocks, again, poor Elaram is going to have to go through all of those and change all of them to conform with the new format, which basically really sucks for Elaram. But it is the way it is. Don't hate Elaram for it, and don't hate Elaram for the fact that a Feed the Beast Ultimate Pack is not going to be coming out probably for 1.5. They're probably waiting for 1.6 for Minecraft to come out before they do any major changes. So just a little heads up if you're playing the Feed the Beast Ultimate Pack. Now, getting on to business. Generators. Talked about pretty much everything else except for generators and using EU. So let's go down my little hallway. And first generator. This thing takes stuff and generates EU out of it. That's pretty much the basic, really basic general gist of how generators work. All of them. They take some condition, like I don't know, sunlight or burnable fuels or some sort of liquid, whatever it is that the particular generator likes, and it turns it into EU. And then you can connect a wire to a generator, or you can connect blocks that use EU, such as the electronic furnace and so forth, and the macerator. You can put them basically next to this block, or you can run wires from it towards those same machines, or a EU storage block like an MFSU, and store the EU out of it that way. This particular one is called, quite simply, just a generator. What are the stats? Well, it has two recipes. Both of them use exactly the same resources, more or less. You know how refined iron is made by just smelting iron ingots, so it's like taking iron and smelting it twice. Basically, this recipe just means you have to smelt iron ingots into 5 refined iron instead of using 5 iron ingots. So it's the same amount of iron, just a little bit more smelting. It's a furnace, a machine block, and an RE battery. However, you can also chuck an iron furnace in there, and 1, 2, 3 refined iron. There you go, there's a generator. How do you make an iron furnace? I'll show you actually. Let's get rid of that just quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 iron around a furnace like that, kind of like a tall hat. There you go, iron furnace. I personally do that just because I cannot be bothered doing more smelting and so forth. Yeah, let's leave all that there. Let's see, this thing generates 10 EU per packet, and it generates 1 packet per tick. It stores 4,000 EU. That's this little bar here on the side with a little bit of it is red. Basically, it's got a little bit of EU already stored in it because I was tinkering around with it earlier. Just like other machines, this is kind of the work slot, and this is the slot that you put items into if you want to charge them up with some EU. Now, what does a generator burn? Here's a good selection of items. You might recognise, well, maybe not that, filled fuel can, but coal, charcoal, all the woods, all the wood tools, signs, all the saplings, cactus, sugar canes, basically pretty much everything that you can smelt or use as fuel in a normal furnace, except for lava. Very important, no lava allowed. You put it down here. Actually, I may as well just show you. Let's get a selection of crap. Let's see. There we go. Look, see? The EU bar is slowly filling. Now, charcoal and coal each produce 4,000 EU. And remember, if this thing is not dumping its EU out into another wire connected to it or another block, then it will only store 4,000 EU, and a piece of charcoal or a piece of coal is worth exactly 4,000 EU. So one of these will completely fill this up. Now, generator this is the most basic tier, really. This is the simplest form of generating EU, and well, to be honest, it's kind of good, but it kind of isn't. You would need quite a lot of these to generate a lot of EU, and you would probably need a lot of charcoal, I would assume, to get them generating a lot of EU sort of consistently, which means basically a lot of tree farms, or you have a big cactus farm, unrealistically large. You could have a big sugarcane farm, and you could dump all of that in there. But there are better ways to generate EU. Like, for instance, this expensive little bugger is called a solar panel. It's made like this. You're probably looking at a couple of those things and wondering what the hell. Now, you know what glass panes are. Don't worry, let's break it down slowly. Every single generator of sorts requires a normal generator, the one that you saw here, this one here, in its recipe. This particular generator, called the solar panel, uses 2 electronic circuits, 2 silicon plates, and a carbon plate. Now, if you played IC2 before, you should know pretty much every one of these things except for the silicon plates. That's because, technically, in normal industrial craft, actually I think the recipe is like this. This is how you make a solar panel. It's 3 coal dust, 3 glass, 2 electronic circuits, and a generator arranged like that. But if you are playing Feed the Beast, or basically if you are playing Greg Tech add-on and you have it enabling to basically switch over a lot of recipes from IC2 to its own recipes, then this is one of its own recipes. A solar panel is a lot more expensive first up. Silicon plate, to get one of these, you need to, let me see if I can show it. Nope. Here we go. In an industrial blast furnace, you put 2 silicon cells. How do you get silicon cells? There's a few ways. You don't use a liquid transposer. I mean, seriously, who would dump liquid silicon in a tank? But anyways, that's one way. Let's see. Industrial electrolyzer. Chuck 16 sand, 2 empty cells in there. You'll get 1 silicon cell, 1 compressed cell. There's like a whole bunch of different recipes that you can use, and gives you a varying amount of silicon cells. There's other ways as well. Industrial centrifuge. There you go. Redstone will give you 3 mercury and silicon, 5 pyrite, and a ruby dust. This is interesting, actually. That's an easy way to get ruby dust. But, oh yeah, you can also get it from scrap boxes. There you go. So, basically, there's a few ways to get silicon cells. If you want to start doing solar panels, you're going to have to start with silicon cells, which means, at the very least, you need either an industrial electrolyzer, or, the more cheaper option, is an industrial centrifuge, and start centrifuging basically a lot of redstone, because 2 silicon cells per plate, 2 plates, you need 4 silicon cells. Okay? Keep that in mind when you want to use a solar panel. What are the stats? This thing generates 1 EU per packet per tick during the daytime. So when this sun is all yellow and stuff, that means this thing is making EU. It's only got 1 slot up here. It's basically for you to put your items into charge, just like every other generator. Requires direct sunlight. Can have entities above. Now, by direct sunlight, I don't mean it needs to be able to see the sun, which, to be honest, is actually setting. That's good timing, actually. I'll show you what happens when there is no sun. But it doesn't generally mean direct sunlight. You know, the sun's behind this wall and you shouldn't be able to see this thing, but it means if you look straight up, it needs an unobstructed view of the sky. So if I put, you know, I don't know, let's grab a few of these things to demonstrate. If I put this cobblestone block here or anywhere up there, then it will not have a direct view of the sky, and therefore it will not work. Now, it's not working because it's night time. Let's set it to day because I just want to demonstrate exactly what it means. Like what, I'll give you an example of certain things that will block out the sun. Now, right now, it's daylight. I've just set it to dawn, and the yellow sun is up. This thing is producing EU, or at least it can. You know, if I had wires connected to it, I could dump the EU somewhere. This thing only stores 1 EU anyway, so it doesn't really store anything. It just stores what it can make. Now, if I put this cobblestone block here to block out the sunlight, look, see, the room is dark and the solar panel is not working. Now, that isn't necessarily good. And I'm just punching holes everywhere. Okay, finally I got rid of it. However, there we go, it's working again. If I put glass there, there is... No, I may have stuffed this up a little bit because what I need to do is plug this back up. Oh, yeah, that didn't do anything. Anyways, a good way to test whether or not a material will impede a solar panel's view of the sky is to just put it in a dark room like this with just one, you know, a one block space going straight to the sky, put this under that space, and then put the material in the tunnel. If sunlight is being let in, and it clearly is right now, then this solar panel will work. Other materials are things like pipes and liquid ducts and, you know, tubes, that sort of thing. Most glasses of all types, I think, in the Feed the Beast pack. That's just an example of a way to test whether or not a material will or will not block this thing's view of the sky. And there are a few other renditions of it, basically more powerful versions, but they are not in Industrial Craft. I will cover those in another video. Moving on to, and I love this one, this is called a geothermal generator. You see it at the start of all of my videos along with a solar panel, actually, strangely enough. This thing does exactly what the generator doesn't do. It uses lava and only lava. You put your lava buckets or cells and so forth into this bottom slot here, and this tank will fill up slowly. Now, basically, it generates 20 EU per packet, so there you go, twice the voltage, twice the amount of power over the same amount of time as a normal generator, and a lot more than a solar panel. Stores 24 lava buckets. Now, there's a little bit of a distinction with this. I'm going to basically put it to you like this. One lava bucket holds 20,000 EU's worth of power. So I dump a lava bucket in there, it will go in here, this thing will slowly churn through it, and if it does have a way of dumping the EU out somewhere, then you will get 20,000 EU out of it. Very simple. Now, technically, this thing stores 24 buckets of lava in its tank, but it's not EU yet. What it will do is it will just sit that lava there, and it will not do anything until it has a way of dumping all of the EU that it is able to make. So in other words, unless this thing is, you know, hooked up to a machine or a storage device for EU, this is just going to happily sit here and do nothing with lava in its tank, up to 24 buckets worth. But technically, once you've got that lava in there, there is no way of getting that lava out of there. So you can kind of say this thing stores 24 lava buckets, or indirectly it stores 480,000 EU in lava form. I know it's kind of semantics, but hey, look, if you really want to get technical, then whatever. That's the way it is. These are the products that this thing can take. Let's see, you got your obligatory lava bucket. Pretty, whoop, Ooh, crap. Okay. Haha. Gotta love the lag fails. Gotta love them. I love lag. Okay, you go away. Let's get our hand to select it. Now, lava bucket, put it in there. It takes the lava. Now, you can't really see it because this isn't a very big tank. I mean, really, I'm wondering why the author of this mod doesn't make the tank over here to the left of these things and make it a lot larger so you can more clearly see what is and isn't in there. As at the moment it's doing nothing because it's got nowhere to dump all of its energy. If I put a lava cell in there, oh look at that, it disappeared. This one is a lava magic capsule. Basically any container that can hold lava you can dump into here. The only problem is unless you use a bucket, you will lose the container as well. It will only spit out an empty bucket at you. It will not give you an empty cell if you put a lava cell in there. It'll consume it all up. Something to note. You can get around this though. Don't worry, you can automate these things to basically accept liquid duct pipes or Buildcraft waterproof pipes. Basically any pipe that can carry liquid, you can hook it up to any side of this thing and you can dump lava into it that way. Something to take note of. It's actually the same sort of setup that I have over here. I don't think you can see it, but let me show you behind this secret wall for the first time. Yep, I've got a lava tank here. I've got my Buildcraft engines working on a pipe, and that pipe is going to here. Now, this thing is full. It's got nowhere else to put its energy, and yeah. This lava will just happily sort of sit there. These engines will never blow up. It's a very simple setup that you can use to try and get your... Oh, we don't want to look at those yet. To get your geothermal generator working nice and effectively. This is how you make it, by the way. A generator, 2 more refined iron, 4 more glass, and 2 empty cells. You can make an empty cell by using tin ingots 1, 2, 3, 4 in a sort of rotated square shape in your crafting bench, and that will give you 4 tin or 4 empty cells if you're using Greg Tech and Feed the Beast Ultimate Pack like me. Moving on. This thing, this rather simple yet complicated little bugger is called a water mill, and no, you don't place it into a stream of moving water like you would assume. This thing works in 2 modes. You can dump buckets of water in here and only buckets of water. Actually, I'm not entirely sure about that. Maybe it takes water cells as well and all of that. Actually, yeah, it does. It takes all of these as input. It only... Let's see, let's try it. Yep, there we go. Okay, so it kind of... Yeah, it does. It kind of stores... There you go. 4 containers of water's worth of energy, I suppose, in the form of water. And yeah, it would have taken the water bottle and the water cell and all of that, but it can't take any more water. Basically, I think the bucket and the water bottle, don't quote me on the water bottle, but I think these are the only 2 containers, again, that you will get back as empty containers when you dump water into here in the bottom slot. As for all the rest of the containers, you can kiss goodbye to them because they will go away. Watermill can generate 1 EU per packet from buckets of water dumped into its reservoir. Unfortunately, you can't pump water into the watermill to make it generate that 1 EU per packet again. To be honest, I'm kind of glad that's set up like that because that would make these things quite easy. I mean, realistically easy to generate lots of EU for a reasonably cheap price. But if you can figure out a way to dump water buckets into it and then pump the empty buckets out of them and fill them up with water again, liquid transposer, and red power tubes, then you can easily, pump buckets of water in and out of this all day long and you would have no troubles at all. However, there is a second way you can generate a lot less EU than this with pretty much no upkeep whatsoever. You just set it and forget it. what you do is you dump it into, or you submerge it in water. Basically, think of it the area that affects this thing like this. It's a 123 by 123 by 123 cube. It's a 3 meter cube sort of area, square. And if this watermill was placed directly in the center of it, it would be next to 26 tiles of water. Now, they don't have to be water source blocks. They can be flowing water. But you do need to get the power out of this thing somehow, and in wires, so you can put them towards your storage blocks or whatever. So discount another water tile for your wire, and so 27 water tiles minus 1 minus 2 is 25. So the it's really hard to just explain this. I'm going to have to do another video showcasing uses of these things and how to set them up and stuff. But basically, you can generate at most 0.25 EU per packet if you have that sort of water set up, and you generally don't. Sorry, that's my girlfriend calling me. Anyways, I'll show you a little bit more about this in another video, but I'll just say you have to calculate how much EU the water mill makes up per setup, because you can set this up to have, you know, a little bit of water nearby, and you know, it'll generate EU very slowly, very happily by itself. It won't complain about it at all. And there's a common thing called water towers. I will show you that in another video. Cannot pump water through pipes into the water mill. I've told you that. It stores 2 EU. Basically, it stores twice what it can produce. Actually, no. It uses 2 EU per packet for each cell of water. So don't quote me on all of the other containers that you saw from other mods, like capsules and magic capsules and stuff like that, but if you use a bucket or a water bottle, you will get 1 EU per packet. If you use cells, and maybe those other ones as well, you will get 2 EU per packet. So you get twice as much, and it will only store what it can generate. You really do have to pump wires, pump the EU out through wires. How do you make this thing? This is the Greg Tech add-on version. I do know for a fact that it is a much cheaper recipe in Industrial Craft 2. I don't know exactly what it is though, I forget, but this is the Greg Tech version. 1 generator and 4 aluminium ingots gives you 2 water mills. That kind of sucks, because they're not easy to come by, and you need a blast furnace to convert aluminium dust into aluminium ingots. Something to consider, but once you get to that point in the game where you've got yourself set up to make aluminium ingots, you can make a lot of water mills, and I encourage you to do so. It doesn't generate much EU, but it's reliable. This is another option. This thing is called a windmill. Haha, this is how you make it. Generator and 4 carbon plates gives you 1 windmill. Alternatively, in Greg Tech, you can make these magnesium plates by basically putting in a rolling machine. I think it's 3 aluminium on the top, 3 aluminium on the bottom, the ingots, and 3 magnesium dust making up the meat in that sandwich. That will give you 3 of these magnesium plates, and you use 2 of them with a generator to make a windmill. Now, how does this thing work? This is a lot more complicated and convoluted than the water mill, so I'll just make it really quick. It can generate anything between 0 and 11 EU per packet. It varies due to a lot of variables. Some of these variables are stuff like if it's raining or if it's storming, it will generate more EU than normal. Has a chance to break though if it generates more than 5 EU per packet at any one time. And I think it reevaluates the chances of that happening every 5 or 2 seconds or something like that. So yeah, it's a very small chance that it will break, but it can break. You don't want that. Like literally this block placed all the way up there in the sky, I can tell you right now, it has a chance of making more than 5 EU per packet. And if it does break, then this thing, it'll be like someone broke it with a pickaxe. It will just throw back at you like a machine block or something crappy, and that's it. You don't want that to happen, so keep that in mind. The higher up the windmill, the more EU it can generate. However, will not create EU if on or below sea level, which is 64, which currently is actually this. I'm standing on 64. So right now it's sitting on the lowest possible point in this particular world, this windmill, to make EU, and it will generate pretty much bugger all. It will treat anything other than air as an obstruction. What does this mean? Will work best with no obstructions in a 9 length by 9 width by 7 high box of air. Basically a very large area. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's kind of like almost the width of this cross beam here, squared, and then 7 high. It will basically count up every single air block that is within that box around this thing, and this thing kind of sits at like level 2. So 1, 2, 3, or yeah, 1, 2, yeah. It's complicated, and look, I'll just show you in another video sort of a good setup that I saw someone else do, which basically uses these windmills sort of set up similar to the watermill towers high up in the sky. But basically, if there's less air, it will generate less EU. If it is lower in the world, it will generate less EU. If there is less wind happening, which is a random variable that's sort of like, I think it's worldwide or chunk-wide or something like that. It's very random. It's generated by industrial craft. You have absolutely no control of that whatsoever. Then, more wind means more EU. Less wind, less EU. It's complicated. I'm just going to leave it at that and go to something even more complicated. This thing, this is kind of like a mini game in itself using this thing. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people love industrial craft. They love playing around with this thing. It's a nuclear reactor. Yes, that's right. Nuclear reactor. Now, when you play industrial craft, you probably find uranium lying around in the world, and it's green, and you get uranium ore, you compress it into refined uranium, you shove that in a cell, and you've got yourself a uranium cell. Guess what? This is how you make it. Nuclear reactor, again a generator, down the bottom in the middle. 3 reactor chambers, and an advanced circuit. How do you make a reactor chamber? Machine block, 4 dense copper plates. You make a dense copper plate by shoving 8 copper ingots into a compressor. So there's 32 coppers worth of dense copper plates in one of these, and you need 3 of them. So 96 copper straight off the bat, not including whatever else you might need for the advanced circuit and the generator, just to make a nuclear reactor. That will give you this thing. It gives you 3 columns by 6 rows. So 6 or 18 spaces to play with. What do you do with this area? You shove stuff like this in it. This is not exactly a comprehensive list of the things you can put into it, but it will do for the purposes of very quickly explaining this thing, because again, I'm going to have to go through this, how to use this thing in another video, because it's just way too long and complicated and convoluted. You shove these things in here, and when you switch it on, it will generate EU. It depends on where you place them, what type you have placed, and all of this stuff. Basically, uranium cell, they'll bounce off each other and work more efficiently than if you place 2 uranium cells not next to each other. Let's see, when it's on and it's generating EU from these uranium cells or plutonium or thorium cells, it will also generate heat. Now, a nuclear reactor can blow up if you generate too much heat, basically on the hull of it. So all of these other components are used to move around and store and basically disappear heat. In other words, try and cool the reactor down. So it's kind of like real life. You've got uranium going in the nuclear reactor, it generates power, you need to cool it down to stop it from melting down and blowing up. This is the exception though. This is a heating cell. This helps you heat up a nuclear reactor. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you're using a breeder reactor to do more complicated stuff like taking near depleted uranium cells and turning them into re-enriched uranium cells. Something like that. I don't know. It's very complicated, but basically you've got all these items. You make them, you know, more than one of each type if you really want. That's no problem. And you shove them in here and you try and make some sort of convoluted setup to generate EU. What are the stats? It can generate anywhere between 0 and 2,400 EU per packet, depending on how you have it set up. Can use the components to spread and dissipate heat. By the way, this thing originally has something like 3,000 hull heat because it has 3 reactor chambers to it. And this thing is actually a multi-block design. I should mention that right now. You can take these reactor chambers and if I get rid of that, you can place them. This thing has 6 sides. Remember, each block has 6 sides. So you can place 6 reactor chambers directly next to this thing. 1 below, 1 above, and 1 each on all 4 sides, completing 6 of them. And every time you add a reactor chamber, you add another column in your nuclear reactor to play with. That is good. And you also add another 1,000 hull heat to its maximum. So once you reach the maximum hull heat of a nuclear reactor with heat, that's it. It will blow up and it will leave a very big hole right where it was. You don't want that to happen. It's expensive to make these things and all of the components in the first place. And also if you're silly enough to make one in your home or near your warehouse or stores or whatever, and it just happens to go off and you don't have it encased in, like, you know, hardened materials to try and limit the amount of damage, it's like letting off a lot of TNT. You'll make a mess of everything and you'll cry. So don't do that. There goes the light. Let's bring it back. Now, make a massive explosion if it overheats. Add chambers to increase internal inventory size. You start with 3 columns. You can add 6 more chambers. So you do the math. It's not hard. You get 9 columns all up. Pretty much the same sort of space that you would have if you had a double chest. Can submerge the reactor and chambers in water to cool it. So yeah, kind of like the water mill. You can put water around it, only they need to be water source blocks. Oop, pardon me. Water source blocks, not water streams. Remember that. Water source blocks around this thing will help it cool down, you know, a little bit every second or so, but not much. You're still going to need a lot of these components here to move around and dissipate heat. It's a tricky game to make it work, you know, powerfully without blowing up. Let's see. Uses uranium cells, thorium cells, and plutonium cells. I said that. Requires a redstone signal to run. This was one of the recent-ish additions to industrial craft. They used to run nuclear reactors straight away as soon as you put a uranium cell in there. Kind of a bit dangerous, so instead of making it so a redstone signal would turn a nuclear reactor off, it would turn it on. Good to see. Now, I'm going to finish this video because that is the end of all of the generators that come with industrial craft. Next video I will talk about and show you all of the generators that don't come with industrial craft. Basically almost all of them are with GregTech add-on. But look at what we have here. Whole bunch of animals and all way away from my station of explanation. A nuclear reactor. Oh, look what we got here. Quad plutonium cells. It's completely chockers full of quad plutonium cells. And, a lever. I wonder what happens when I do this and then I run away. Okay. That was pretty much instantaneous. What you just saw, you would never actually do if you were serious about trying to generate EU through a nuclear reactor. I just blew it up. It took, what, a second? 2 seconds at most? And if the game decides to stop lagging... Look, see, I'm inflicted with hunger and radiation because I was around it. I was nearby when the explosion happened and, well, eventually this thing will stop derping around and it will actually show you the crater, but basically all those animals are now dead and there is a crater probably about 40 or 50 blocks in diameter all the way around. Jeez, it'd be really nice if this thing would actually do this. actually show the crater so I could actually end this video. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Thorncraft totem. Didn't notice that. There's never anything under these things, are there? No. Let's just go for a bit of a dig. Nope. Still nothing. That sucks. Well, that's a fail, but take my word for it. This thing has left a big ass crater. I'm going to end the video right here, and I'll probably show you that crater at the next video. Take care, guys. See you next time. Rate, comment, subscribe, yeah, yada yada yada. Love you too. Catch you later.